In this video, a best man stands up at a wedding reception. He raises his glass, he smiles at the bride, and he announces that she's pregnant. The room erupts in applause. The bride is beaming. The groom just nods, because he knows something no one else in that room knows yet. He had a vasectomy 3 years ago. That story's coming. But first, welcome back to the desk. Tonight's case file? Weddings, not the fairy tale kind. No, these are the other kind. The kind where the groom knows exactly what his bride has been doing, and instead of canceling, he waits, he plans, and he turns the happiest day of her life into an execution. 3 grooms, 3 altars, 3 ambushes. Let's begin.
So this happened about 2 years ago. I'm 31 now, but I was 29 when I almost married the woman I thought was the love of my life. Her name was Jessica. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. And look, I'm not gonna pretend I was some perfect boyfriend. I worked a lot. I'm an IT consulting, which means long hours, travel sometimes, the whole thing. But I loved her. I really did. The wedding was set for June 14th. Big church wedding, about 200 guests. Her parents paid for most of it. Her dad's a dentist, mom's a realtor, so they had the money. The whole thing cost like $85,000, which still blows my mind. My best man was my buddy Derek. Known him since college. We were roommates freshman year, stayed tight ever since. He introduced me to Jessica, actually. They worked at the same marketing firm for a while. Now here's where it gets ugly. 2 days before the wedding, I'm at home. Jessica's at her bachelorette party in Scottsdale. Her friends rented an Airbnb, the whole thing. She left her iPad on the kitchen counter. It was connected to her iMessage. I wasn't snooping. I genuinely wasn't. I was looking for a recipe she'd saved. But when I picked it up, the screen lit up with a notification. It was from Derek. And it said, "I can still taste you." I just stood there. For like a full minute. Then I scrolled up. And I read 6 months of messages between my fiancé and my best friend. Explicit stuff. I mean, detailed. Times, places, what they did. She'd been sleeping with him since January. They hooked up at his apartment, at hotels, once in the backseat of his car in a parking garage downtown. And the worst part? They were joking about me. She called me clueless. He called me the meal ticket. There was one message where she said, and I remember this word for word, "He'll never find out." He's too trusting. It's honestly kind of sad. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Scottsdale and confront her right there. But I didn't. I sat down. I took screenshots of everything. Every single message. Saved them to my phone, to my email, to a flash drive. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I was going to let it happen. The day came. June 14th, 2 p.m. The church was packed. Her family on one side, mine on the other. Derek was standing right next to me at the altar, grinning like an idiot. Jessica walked down the aisle. She looked beautiful, I'll give her that. White dress, veil, the whole thing. Her dad was crying. Her mom was crying. Everyone was crying. I wasn't. The priest did his thing. Readings, prayers, whatever. Then came the vows. Jessica went first. She had this whole speech prepared. She talked about how I was her rock, her safe place, how she couldn't wait to spend the rest of her life with me. I watched Derek shift his weight behind me. Nervous. When she finished, the priest turned to me. "And now, do you, Marcus, take Jessica to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I didn't answer. I reached into my jacket pocket. And I pulled out my phone. Jessica's smile faltered. She whispered, "Babe, what are you doing?" I said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Before I answer that question, I think the congregation deserves to know who they're really celebrating today. And I started reading out loud to 200 people. I read the messages about the parking garage. I read the messages where she called me clueless. I read the one where Derek said he'd hit it again after the honeymoon. The room went dead silent. Jessica's face just collapsed. There's no other word for it. All that bridal glow? Gone. She looked like someone had punched her in the stomach. Derek tried to bolt. Like, actually tried to walk off the altar. But my cousin Big Guy, played linebacker in college, stepped into the aisle and just stood there. Blocked him. I finished reading. Put my phone back in my pocket. Then I looked at Jessica and said, I don't. I turned around and walked out of that church. Behind me, I heard her mother screaming. I heard Derek trying to explain. I heard Jessica crying, saying it wasn't what it looked like. But here's the thing about texts. They're exactly what they look like. I found out later that her family tried to save face by saying I had cold feet. Derek moved to Austin 2 months later. Jessica, last I heard, is single and works remotely now. And me? I'm doing fine. Better than fine. Because I didn't just dodge a bullet. I sent it back.
Marcus read her sins out loud. In a church. In front of God and 200 witnesses. There's poetry in that. Dark poetry, but poetry nonetheless. But here's the thing about words. Words can be denied, twisted, reframed. He's lying. He's crazy. Those texts were fake. You've heard it before. Our next groom? He didn't rely on words. He brought footage. High definition. Time-stamped. Played on a projector screen in front of every single person she'd ever tried to impress. Some men bring receipts. This man brought the whole surveillance tape.
All right, so let me set the stage here. I'm 34. I work in software development. I make good money, not rich, but comfortable. About $140,000 a year, which in Ohio goes pretty far. My ex-fiancée, I'll call her Rachel, was 29 at the time. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant she traveled a lot. Conferences, client meetings, the whole thing. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. The wedding was at this venue outside Columbus. Old converted barn, very Pinterest, very Instagram. Cost us about $65,000 total. Her parents chipped in. I paid most of it. Now here's the thing. I'm not a jealous guy. Never have been. But about 4 months before the wedding, Rachel started acting different. She was more protective of her phone. She'd leave the room to take calls. She started going to the gym at weird hours, like 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. And she had this work conference in Cleveland that she was weirdly vague about. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I trusted her, but I couldn't shake it. So, and I know this sounds extreme, I hired a private investigator. His name was Gary. Retired cop, runs his own firm now. I told him my concerns. He said he'd look into it. 3 weeks later, Gary sends me a file. Photos, timestamps, and video. Rachel had been meeting a guy named Trent, one of her co-workers. They'd been seeing each other for at least 5 months. So this started before we got engaged. Gary got footage from the hotel where they met. Security camera outside the room. You could see Rachel walk in at 8:47 p.m. You could see Trent follow her 5 minutes later. And you could see them both leave together the next morning at 7:15 a.m., laughing, her fixing her hair. No room for interpretation. No plausible deniability. Just evidence. So now I had a choice. I could confront her, call it off, be the bigger person. Or I could let her have her perfect wedding. Let her feel like she got away with it. And then show everyone who she really was. I chose option 2. The ceremony was fine. I said my vows. She said hers. I smiled. She smiled. We kissed. Everyone clapped. But the whole time, I was thinking about the flash drive in my pocket. The reception was the main event. We had this plan where we'd show a video montage during dinner. You know the type, photos of us growing up, embarrassing baby pictures, clips from vacations, set to some Ed Sheeran song. Rachel was so excited about this video. She'd helped pick the photos. She cried during the preview. What she didn't know was that I'd made a modification. The video started normally. Baby photos, high school pics, our first date. Everyone was smiling. A few people were tearing up. Then it got to the part with our couple moments. Vacations, holidays, that kind of thing. And right after a clip of us in Cancun, the footage changed. It was the hotel hallway, black and white, time-stamped. Rachel walking in, Trent following, Rachel leaving the next morning, and then a title card I'd added myself. This is who you're toasting tonight. I've never heard 150 people go quiet that fast. Rachel was sitting next to me at the head table. She was mid-sip on her champagne when the footage started. I watched her face go from confused to horrified to white as a sheet. She tried to stand up. She said, "Turn it off. Turn it off." But I'd given the DJ specific instructions. The video played to the end. When it finished, I stood up. I took off my ring. I set it on the table in front of her, and I said, "I want an annulment. You can keep the gifts." Her mom started screaming at me. Her dad just sat there, staring at the screen like he was still processing. Her bridesmaids were crying. Rachel was hyperventilating. I walked out with my groomsmen. We went to a bar downtown. I bought a round for everyone. Best $200 I spent that day. The annulment went through in 3 months. Ohio makes it pretty straightforward when there's evidence of fraud. I got back about $40,000 of what I'd paid for the wedding. Rachel and Trent broke up 2 months later. Apparently, the relationship was mostly about the thrill. Once it was public, the thrill was gone. And me, I don't regret a single frame of that video.
Video evidence. 150 witnesses. A projector screen the size of a small car. That's not just revenge. That's a premiere. But let me ask you something. What if you didn't need footage? What if you didn't need screenshots? What if the trap wasn't set by you at all, but by the liar herself? Our final groom didn't plan the reveal. He didn't hire a PI. He simply waited. Because he knew something that made every future lie she told mathematically impossible. This is the one. The one where biology becomes the witness.
Alright. Buckle up. Because this one still feels surreal to me, and I lived it. I'm 36. I work in finance, commercial lending. I'm not flashy, but I've done well for myself. Own a condo in Charlotte, drive a nice car, got a decent 401k. My ex-wife, I'll call her Megan, was 32 when we got married. She worked in HR for a healthcare company. Seemed stable. Seemed normal. We dated for 2 years, engaged for 1. The wedding was at a hotel in uptown Charlotte. About 200 guests. Cost around $70,000, which I paid for almost entirely because Megan's family didn't have much money. Now, here's the thing you need to know about me. When I was 28, I got a vasectomy. I know that sounds extreme for a young guy, but I'd done a lot of thinking about it. I didn't want kids. Not then, not ever. I'd seen what parenthood did to some of my friends, the stress, the financial strain, the relationships falling apart. It wasn't for me. So I got the procedure done. Confirmed sterile. Moved on with my life. When I met Megan, I told her on the 3rd date. I said, "Hey, I should be upfront, I've had a vasectomy. Kids aren't in my future. If that's a deal breaker, I understand." She said she was fine with it. She said she wasn't sure she wanted kids either. She said it was actually kind of a relief. We moved in together 8 months later. Got engaged a year after that. Everything seemed fine. But about 6 months into the engagement, Megan started acting weird. She was more secretive. More distant. She started going out with coworkers I'd never met. She bought new lingerie that I never saw her wear. Classic red flags, right? But I didn't have proof. And I wasn't the type to snoop. So I just watched. Waited. I figured if something was going on, it would eventually come out. I just didn't expect it to come out like this. The ceremony was normal. Church wedding, traditional vows, nothing crazy. Megan cried during her vows. Her mom cried. Everyone was happy. Or so I thought. The reception was at the hotel. Dinner, dancing, toasts, the whole thing. My best man, Chris, was supposed to give a speech. We'd been friends since high school. Good guy. Loyal. But here's the thing, Megan had asked Chris to include a special surprise in his speech. She told him about it the night before and swore him to secrecy. He thought it was going to be this sweet moment. Chris gets up. He does the usual stuff, tells embarrassing stories about me, says nice things about Megan, gets a few laughs. Then he says, "And now, I've been asked to share a special announcement. Megan told me last night, and I'm honored to be the one to tell everyone." He raises his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, Megan is pregnant. We're going to have a little baby in about 7 months." The room erupted. Cheers. Applause. People were crying. Megan's mom was hugging her sister. Megan looked at me with this huge smile. Like she'd just given me the greatest gift. And I just sat there. Because I knew. I let the applause die down. Then I stood up. Everyone was looking at me, expecting me to be emotional. Expecting tears. A hug. Some big romantic moment. Instead, I said, very calmly, "That's interesting. Because I had a vasectomy 3 years ago." You could actually hear people doing the calculation. The smiles froze. The applause stopped. And then, the murmuring started. Megan's face went from glowing to gray in about 2 seconds. She tried to recover. She said, "Babe, what are you talking about?" I said, "I'm talking about the vasectomy I got when I was 28. The one I told you about on our 3rd date. The one you said was a relief." Someone at a back table said, "Oh my God." Megan started crying. She said, "It's a miracle. It happens. Vasectomies fail sometimes." I said, "They fail in about 1 in 2,000 cases. And I've been tested annually. I'm sterile. Have been for years." Then I looked at her father, nice guy, worked his whole life, saved up to help pay for this wedding, and I said, "Sir, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But your daughter has been lying to both of us." Megan tried to leave. She grabbed her dress and started walking toward the exit. Her maid of honor, her sister, grabbed her arm and said, "Meg, is it true?" Megan didn't answer. That was all the confirmation anyone needed. I didn't chase her. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I sat back down, finished my drink, and let the room process what had just happened. About 20 minutes later, I got up, thanked the guests for coming, and told them the open bar would stay open for another hour. Then I went up to my hotel room, packed my bag, and left. The marriage was annulled 3 weeks later. She didn't contest it. I never found out who the father was. Honestly, I didn't care. Because the moment Chris made that announcement, she'd already told on herself. All I had to do was let the math speak.
3 weddings, 3 ambushes, 3 grooms who looked betrayal in the eye and waited, not because they were patient men, but because they understood something most people don't. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about timing. It's about letting your enemy believe they've won, and then removing the floor beneath their feet. Now, I have a question for you. Were these men justified, or did they go too far? Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you haven't already, you know what to do. Until next time, the desk will be waiting.